Welcome viewers to the Personal Injury Law Show. This is a show that talks about everything in personal injuries. My name's Tony Carbone. I'm a lawyer of over 25 years experience. With me today I've got a partner in the law firm, John Carancis.
Hi Tony, hi viewers.
And Nuncio Trattea, partner in the law firm.
Tony, viewers, welcome.
Viewers, tonight we'll be talking about class actions, but before that...
Tony, what's in the news?
Viewers, there's been a lot of stories in the news, but some of the interesting ones. The first one's Ambo's on mill break as a woman is lying dying. Now, Nuncio,
Shocking.
what's this?
Oh, this is basically an article in which said there was a lady who was close to death. Is that right, John?
Yes.
And the Ambos are on a mill break.
She's been burnt in a bushfire. She's lying there. The ambulance has been called. They're on their lunch break, Tony.
So
they're
what
having
happened?
their meal break.
The ambulance that was closest to the scene, 10 minutes away apparently.
Exactly.
They're having a meal break, so they've had to dispatch an ambulance from an hour away?
From St Albans, and it's taken them over half an hour to get there.
And they had to call a helicopter as well, from what I understand.
Exactly.
So.
Nunc, would there be a case for negligence if something happened to her? Let's say she died and the family members could sue for...
Well, look, if that, I suppose delay or lag in time did cause further damage, then arguably there could be, Tony, because it said, they're there to do a role and they haven't fulfilled that. So,
Geez, as a family member, you'd be pretty distraught, wouldn't you?
She suffered horrific injuries, Tony, that this is just not on. We've talked about this before, hospital shortages, ambulance shortages, but to delay getting to a scene of
An emergency.
disaster because you're on your meal break. What's going on here,
It's
Tony?
outrageous. It is, isn't it? Could you imagine saying to a judge, Your Honour, I can't come because I'm hungry?
Yeah. I want to go to lunch, Your Honour, and then I'll come back and do what you ask. No, just not on.
This leads on to that story about the faulty fire system puts lives at risk. Nunc, what's that all about?
Well, so it leads on to it. Basically, what's occurring is that the dispatch system for the fire brigade is really, I suppose, it's inadequate. They're not getting the proper dispatches to their to the facilities, and again, there's delays, there's lags, and it's causing more damage and potential lives at risk. And look, it's a resource issue again, and it needs to be looked at.
John, this is a little bit like making a phone call and telling someone to come to your property and they go somewhere else because they don't know how to get there.
You'd think it'd be pretty simple, and you'd think it'd be all down pat by now. But Tony, again, we've got a situation where resources aren't provided by the government to these organisations, and they're just needed. Hospitals, ambulances, fire brigades, they need money and they're not getting it.
The system seems a little bit tired, Tony. You said just the other day I saw that ambulances have just started getting GPS in the ambos. And that's crazy. They're still looking at a malway to get to a
Tell you what, it's
scene of an
the last
accident.
thing you'd want to be doing in an emergency situation, trying to find out where to go to, don't you think?
Oh, look, I said, I wouldn't know. I said, we all rely on our GPS these days, and it's a much quicker system as well. So
If it's a case of a lack of funds, after this deficit the other night, we got Buckley's chance of getting any funds, have we?
Exactly, and monies going to Victoria by the federal government have decreased by a couple of $1 billion, so that'll cause another problem.
The case of Dunning, the fellow that died at Crown's, resurfaced again. You got Crown being sued over the bashing of the people that were with him at the time.
yeah, well, this stems from the fact that 2 further security officers have been charged with assault and intentionally causing damage, and now the 2 people that survived that melee, you could say, have launched civil action against Crown and the bouncers. And look, the fact that they've been charged, it seems a fairly straightforward case, I would have thought.
Look, Tony, in the end, anyone that's assaulted has a right to claim, don't they, Nuncio?
That's right.
And, organisations such as Crown are on notice that if your security guards act in an inappropriate manner, well, people out there will issue court proceedings.
Of course. And in this case, you don't need thresholds, do you?
Yeah, generally with the public liability case, there's a threshold of getting over what's called 5% whole person impairment, which I suppose knocks out those innocuous claims. But
That's for physical injury.
yeah, for physical injury. Yeah, the fact that, and it's 10% for psychological injuries, but the fact that this is an intentional assault, the wrongs that requires that there's no threshold and they can sue for their injuries.
There's another interesting case where death threat payout. This is a family that sued Victoria Police for using their property for surveillance. There was a criminal living next door. What do you think about that, John?
It's a very interesting case, and really, Tony, when you think about it, it's logical. The police, for one reason or another, this couple were living next door to a known criminal, a Mr. Big. The police used their house as surveillance. What happens? Of course, the criminal found out that the police were using that house as surveillance.
It's a stakeout.
He's made death threats against this couple now. They've suffered most likely nervous shock, stress and anxiety.
Post-traumatic stress.
And they've been paid out quite a large, substantial sum.
120,000 knots.
Yeah, and then from there, John, it's led to a family law dispute.
Yes.
Yeah,
yes.
no, that's a tragic part of the case because they got their payout and since then they've had a breakdown.
Well, the marriage has really split, and one of the factors was all this the stress and anxiety from the death threats. But in the end, the police again are liable for their actions, and this all comes back to Crown Casino, the Victoria Police, all these type of organisations. You are liable for the actions of your employees.
And John, that's a little bit like the case of where they used the roadblock recently. Yeah.
Exactly.
They were chasing a fellow on the freeway and they said to willy-nilly, they said to people, put your car there and stop this guy from driving through.
Exactly. The actions of a police officer, well, again, that police officer and Victoria Police are liable for any negligent actions.
Have they been reprimanded, John? Do you know? No?
There's an internal investigation going on.
This is an interesting story, Nuts. There's new technology to monitor sex offenders, arsonists and boozers. They're going to put these tracking devices on their legs so at least they can work out where they're at any particular time. What do you think about that, John?
Very interesting. You would have thought this type of technology would have been around, has been around for a while.
It's in the States from what I understand. They use it in the States.
Exactly. Look, anything that stops these people from reoffending is great, but at the same time, shouldn't they be in jail, Tony?
I don't know.
Tony, look, if they're on or off parole, look, I think it's a useful resource, and I think it's one that should be adopted, and makes the society a safer place.
What about breach of privacy and things like that?
Look, they've done a crime, so I think they've lost that right.
So it's Big Brother looking over your shoulder, John.
Well, in this case, I think it's appropriate that Big Brother watch over these type of people,
especially sex offenders.
Exactly.
Viewers, we've got to go to a sponsors break. Stay tuned. After the break, we're going to be looking at class actions and bushfire litigation.